are ready to start the second panel, and in this panel we are going to be talking about infrastructure on Bitcoin, right? Because a few years ago there was no infrastructure on Bitcoin where you could build NFTs, DeFi protocols, and so on. And nowadays you have tons of new applications on the Bitcoin layer. So today we'll be talking with some of the top builders in the Bitcoin space, as well as what are the use cases that are now trending in the Bitcoin space, and how can developers take advantage and also start building on Bitcoin, right? So today I'll give you also time to introduce yourselves, but we have Ian. Ian is the CEO of Xverse, which
CSO.
Okay, sorry.
CEO.
CSO.
I think Ken would kill me if I pretend I'm a CEO.
We will edit. We'll make
Xverse is, I'll say, the first Bitcoin wallet that is not only a Bitcoin wallet, but is also an Ordinals wallet, and you can also interact with DeFi protocols on Bitcoin using the Xverse wallet. Then we have Chen, CEO of ALEX.
CTO.
CTO.
You see, he get killed by Ken, but I'll be even worse.
So, Chen, the CTO of ALEX. ALEX is building the finance layer for Bitcoin, right? And we have Zez, the founder.
I'm the CEO.
Of Ors Games. Ors Games is the very first GameFi game built on the top of Bitcoin, and they have the very first BRC20 token that actually has utility in the Bitcoin space. So I'll give you also a little bit time so that you can introduce yourselves.
Amazing. Yeah, should I just... Oh, you can hear me?
Yeah, I
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
To be honest, I don't know what this one does.
Yeah,
so.
I guess it's for the recording. So, Henry, thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here. As you mentioned, I'm from Xverse. The official title is CSO, but we're a startup company, so we do a lot of things, and I'm specifically focusing on the commercial side of the business as well as the product strategy, because I was actually the person that was like very early on in Ordinals and hosting a lot of these Twitter spaces, and I saw that excitement there very early, and so kind of decided that like, hey, we need to push into this vertical very, very hard, and that was obviously a very great decision for us. And so yeah, I'm focusing on that, and also you may have seen or heard the Ordinal show. So I'm one of the co-hosts, and it's probably the biggest space, especially when we talk about English-speaking spaces on Ordinals and everything Bitcoin innovation. So yeah, hopefully I can also see you guys there very soon.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Chan An. I'm the CTO at ALEX. So ALEX started in actually May 2021. So we have two co-founders, Rachel in front of me, and also Chente in New York. All three of us are not crypto degen, if you like. We come from TradFi, having been in the investment banking for a long time. What sort of got us to join the crypto and DeFi really is after we read the Uniswap V3 white paper. That really sort of opened my eyes in that the possibility of being able to create something that isn't possible in the TradFi. For example, removal of the credit risk and counterparty risk, what you call trustless, which is sort of misused often, but nevertheless, I think it's very, very powerful narrative. So that's how we started. We wanted to build on the Bitcoin, and then we got the folks at the Stacks. We started to build on that, launched the mainnet in January 2022, and subsequently we became the biggest DeFi on Stacks. But ever since actually the launch of Ordinals and so on, a lot of things have changed, and I'm very happy to actually talk about what has changed and also what we have been focusing on and what we do see over the next 6 months and in a few years over the Bitcoin and overall the ecosystem. But part of what we have been focusing really on is integrating the Bitcoin and the stacks because of the unique nature, if you like, the characteristics of Bitcoin means the integration role of 2 layers to enable smart contract and thereby allowing the DeFi experience to be fully felt is extremely important. So we recently went through sort of rebranding, quote unquote. Again, this is a misnomer. It doesn't make any sense because we didn't change the name, anything like that. But anyway, we couldn't find any better English word. We're all maybe non-native, I don't know. But anyway, so we have done that. So I'll talk a bit more about what we do, why we did it, and how we want to work with our other builders. But overall, I'm very happy to be here, and thank you to Spartan Group for organizing it as well. Thank you.
Hey guys, good afternoon. My name is Seth. I'm the founder and CEO of Ors Games. We build video games on Bitcoin. So if you know about ordinals, you can inscribe any file types within a certain file size. And as soon as we knew about ordinals in February, we were like, okay, if you can inscribe HTMLs, that means you can inscribe video games. And that's when we started putting just retro games in very small file sizes on Bitcoin as ordinals. And then when BRC20 came out on March 9th, we're like, okay, now we can do token standard on Bitcoin. If you combine video game and token standard, you get GameFi. And we became the first GameFi project on Bitcoin March 16th when we launched the OG token, stands for Ors Games. And we run game seasons. We've been running 3 seasons now. At our peak during the height of the last small ordinal boom in May and June, we had over 100,000 wallets that played our games. A lot of those were for airdrops. They come in groups and they come in whole cohorts. Super happy to be here. And incidentally, this event venue right here, this WeWork, yes. Y'all nodding. This is the same venue where we had the
OrdCon, right?
OrdCon
yeah.
In April I think 14th or 16th this year.
Yeah.
And OrdCon in April was the first ever offline IRL event since Ordinals came out. So this is at the exact same venue. Which is super cool to be here again when I learned about the venue here. And the Ordinals community in Asia is booming, both in the NFT space as well as the token space. And we're kind of the project that's building for both and utilizing gaming as a way to get more people from Web 2 to on board onto Web 3. So great to be here. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That's super exciting. And let's get straight into it. So over the last 1 year or so, we have tons of new use cases on the top of Bitcoin. From Lightning Network growing a lot, new layer 2s or the growth of emergence of layer 2s, non-fungible tokens and fungible tokens. Can you guys bring us up to speed on where we are at in terms of Bitcoin infrastructure?
Yeah, maybe I can start because we have some data. As you mentioned, we are basically the top wallet in the Bitcoin Web3 space, right? I like to call it Bitcoin Web3 space because obviously there's a lot of moving parts, but obviously there's a lot of other Bitcoin wallets, but they don't necessarily focus on connecting to applications, marketplaces, ordinals, and stuff like that. And so we focus on Bitcoin Web3 space, and we see a lot of developers obviously using our APIs because they also want to integrate to make it a very smooth experience for their users. And it's very interesting, right? Because I remember, was it like maybe 2-3 months ago when people started saying ordinals are dead because we didn't have much liquidity and there was a lot of kind of, I would say, miscommunication, misinformation in the mainstream crypto media. So since that point, we actually more than tripled in terms of the developer activity. In terms of like how many people are integrating with the wallet or are using the APIs on a weekly basis. And so, definitely ordinals or like the Bitcoin Web3 space is very far from that. We see obviously much less liquidity, but we see a lot more builders. And that's to your point, right? Where are we in the infrastructure? I think, to be honest, we're still extremely early on, right? Like obviously there have been companies such as Stacks, and these layers that have been around for a little bit longer, but most of the other things that are kind of coming to play now, it's just early conversations. Yesterday we were hosting a space with Robin, who was the person behind the BitVM, right, for instance. And that's also something that is just very recent kind of development when it comes to like potentially being able to do much more with Bitcoin than what we could have done in the past. And so I think there is definitely many more layer 2s, there is many more stuff that people are experimenting with. And I think personally we need at least 6 to 8 months to actually see which one of these things is potentially going to be viable. I know that Stacks is also like hopefully soon launching some major upgrades that are going to unlock a lot of new possibilities for DeFi, for people that actually want to build on Bitcoin with smart contracts and stuff like that. And so again, I think the excitement is there and it's great, but in terms of the infra, I think we still need a little bit more time to really get to that point to see, okay, what are going to be the things that are the major contributors, to the Web3 on Bitcoin. And ultimately, that's the same even for us or for wallets, right? Like, we're still kind of at the very beginning, right? We have been like heads down for the past 8 months and launching features and stuff, but there's probably 30 other things that we have to do to get better, So that's kind of like my point of view when I look at the infrastructure when it comes to Bitcoin Web3, but Chen is probably going to have other perspective.
Okay. I'm pausing here because there's so much one can say.
It's a very broad question.
Yeah, I'm like, where should I start? I already get sort of very... Again, there are many things you can say, but I think the most important thing is, to be honest, I think question is not well defined in the sense that if you say, do we have enough infrastructure on Bitcoin? What do you mean by that? What kind of infrastructure do we need? And then for builders like us in particular, why do we need infrastructure of this sort and that sort? For what purposes, right? And I think for a lot of builders like us, it points to not necessarily about the technology. And I think the debates, we heard about the previous panel as well between sort of a BitVM or the ZeroSync as well as Stacks. I think those discussions is very meaningful and very good. But one thing that we have to recognize is that a single L2 is not going to be the sole winner. There will be multiple winners. And in fact, we're already seeing it there. Now, Polygon came out first. When it comes to, for example, people talking about Stacks versus a BitVM and things like that, one of the good similarities or sort of the comparison I can make is perhaps, if you look at the way Melody talked about Nakamoto release. Now, Nakamoto release, for example, and I want to talk a bit more about it. It may take a bit of time, by the way. I can go on forever, but anyway, I'll try to reduce it quickly. Now, it's going to reduce the block time from currently 10 to 15 minutes in tandem with Bitcoin blockchain into 5 seconds per block. Now, that's going to put Stacks in line with about Ethereum mainnet, right? So if you then think about just from the confirmation speed, the relationship or the connection between the Bitcoin and Stacks, and the way they're going to group the blocks together and then settle the header of the blocks onto the Bitcoin as its data layer, it's actually quite similar to the way Polygon actually came out. Polygon mainnet I'm talking about, which was launched in 2020, right? Now then we're talking about BitVM and the ZeroSync, all of which are roll up. Yeah. Now, I think one of the investors mentioned that as if sort of, not in a sort of negative way, but sort of Stacks is somewhat different from the roll-up. But again, I think one of the good characterization of Stacks is what you call sovereign roll-up. And in a very simple way, in a way you sum up all the blocks and then periodically settle. Again, it's very similar. But setting it aside, if you just look at the Stacks and Polygon, and then now you have Arbitrum and Optimism. Yeah. So Optimism with the VPM. And then ZK, what's the arbit? No, sorry. What's the ZK rollup? Let's say, with ZK ZeroSync, for example. Yeah. Now, when Arbitrum, Optimism, and those base and whatnot were introduced, did Polygon go away? No, not at all. That actually made the Polygon stronger. So I think it is about making the pie bigger. So that's the first thing I want to say. Having said that though, now again, going back to the infrastructure question, I think what is more relevant for the builders is actually not about the L2, because the builders we want to build right now. If you again think about going back to the EVM story of having seen Polygon, how long did we have to wait until we saw Optimism, for example? About 2 years. Yes, so they launched about 2020, the Polygon, I think Optimism came out. They were saying 2021, but then I think they came out around 2022, so about 2 years. That's even with the fact that Ethereum mainnet supports smart contract. Now again, Bitcoin, for very, very good reason, does not support smart contract. And I think it should stay that way and so on. But that actually makes the whole development on Bitcoin that much more challenging, right? So we have stacks. We have stacks as an L2 that enables smart contract that has been around for a few years. How long are we going to take for those good ideas like BitVM and so on to actually come to production? I think we're talking about at least 2 years, 2 to 3 years. Again, it's great, and if you can survive, if I'm not dead by then, that's great, by crypto age, but that is long time you're talking about. So from builders' perspective, when you talk about infrastructure, we are talking about what is relevant today. And what is relevant today and what prevents builders from building on Bitcoin? It is the difficulty, the clunkiness, it's the user experience that prevents. So even, for example, we were talking about BRC20 and so on, off-chain indexes and so on, they all goes towards single purpose, improve user experience. And I think that is the most critical thing that we as the community need to build. And once we start having those infrastructure in place, then I think the developer adoption and the user adoption, sorry, I always tend to, it's a bit too heavy for me. I have we'll see more the developers coming to the Bitcoin economy and so on. And from that perspective, I think, again, we can talk about, again, the migration of EVM developers to the Bitcoin world. I think, in my view, is almost inevitable once we have that in place. Because now, I come from TradFi myself, and I'm a banker once. And a lot of people say bankers are cold-blooded. And a lot of people say because we builders are ideological, and we were talking about open source, utopia and things like that. That is true, but at the same time, they are all very cold-blooded and incentive-driven. So the key that we need to provide as a Bitcoin, if you like, the community, is provide that incentive, provide those opportunities for EVM builders to come to Bitcoin to build if you like, the opportunities themselves. And I think that is the most critical piece in terms of the infrastructure that we need to focus on. And once we can do that, the earlier slides show that iceberg. I actually think there is a possibility, if we get it right, the percentage of DeFi as percentage of the market cap, the Ethereum was about 25%. I think there is a genuine chance that we can actually exceed DeFi percentage, exceed the 25%. Because we can provide much more better user experience to the users, and we, as a Bitcoin community, is closer from the proximity to the Bitcoin holders compared to the EVM. So I think that is really the key.
Awesome. Yeah, sorry, what were we talking about? latest developments on ordinals, right?
Yeah,
Infra. Okay. Yeah, infra is important because it's what builders build on top of, right? I'm so sorry. I keep looking at Jack. Can I get a shout out to Jack? Jack, how are you? Jack Liu. Jack.
He doesn't care about you.
I do want to give a shout out to Jack. Jack Liu from OrdSwap, first marketplace to launch on ordinals. Also former CSO of OKX.
And he called BRC20 6 months ago.
He called BRC20 6 months ago. He called Ordi 6 months ago. Made a big presentation here 6 months ago. Anyway, that's Jack. I didn't know you were going to be here today. More qualified than I am to be on the panel. Yeah, let's talk infra. So Bitcoin to us is like a very, it's what's happening right now is typical for crypto in the sense that it's fat protocol, thin application, right? We build applications. So we're like this very thin layer of activities on top. During the bull market, when lots of people are going into the space, lots of users come to us. But the massive number of people are still at the protocol level, utilizing this, being on this real estate, so to speak. We like to liken different blockchains as like different countries, different nations. So cross-chain is like kind of getting a visa to another country, right? That's the analogy people like to use. So for us, the way we see the activities or innovations right now is there is a lot of battle at the protocol level. So for example, token standard on BTC is a battle between BRC20, later ORC20, and now Runes. Right? And then there are battles also between Ordinals protocol, and then now something called Atomicals that came out. And there's a lot of arguments in terms of how you can improve something and make it better for people. Actually, can I get a show of hands? How many people here hold Ordinals? Hold Ordinals. Okay, half the room. How about BRC20 tokens? BRC20 tokens, about half the room.
Still a lot of work to do, man.
Lots of work to do. Yeah, yeah. If you hold neither, but you're here, you know that this is what's going to make you money in the next bull run, right? Because this is probably the biggest shift in the entire Web3 space that's happened in the past 2 years. Okay? Actually, ever, because BTC initially defined what is Web3. So the protocol battles is what a lot of people pay attention to, and is where a lot of value can be extracted if you're an investor and you buy and you sell, right? If you trade. And I think for this part of the world, for Asia, people really focus on token standard. Any new token standard, people basically rush in because tokens are a lot more liquid. It's not NFTs where you have to think about what you're buying and selling. And I think, so that's why I think a lot of attention right now is directed towards Runes in the Chinese community that I'm most plugged in. And also what's going to happen with BRC20, like what's going to happen with Ordi specifically, because what's the stat, like 90% of wallets that made any profit in Ordinals made profit off Ordi. Basically, if you miss Ordi, you're most likely losing money in this Ordinals era. So what's going to be the next Ordi, or what's going to happen with Ordi going forward, going with the token standard shift? I think that's what a lot of people are paying attention to. And with projects like us, we've launched the BRC20 token, right, the OG token. And so it's critical also for us, if the BRC20 standard is going to shift away, what are we going to do? Like, we talked to Alex about going to do an IDO on stacks, bridging over, but if BRC20 is no longer what investors are interested in, then we need to shift to a different token standard, and what's the associated cost with that. So that's what I think a lot of projects are going to be paying a lot of attention to. Thank you.
Awesome, that's really cool. Sorry, just a question. Is it capturing everyone's sound?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Just want to make sure because, yeah. Okay, I wanted to kind of do a follow-on question, which is like, okay, so when the infrastructure is getting mature, you start to have some token standards that start to get more use. So what are the use cases that you see emerging in the future? I believe that, like you guys said, probably all the use cases that you have nowadays on Ethereum, you will have also on Bitcoin. But what do you see like over the next 1 year or so, the potential use cases that are going to grow the most? And maybe I'll start with Zed first.
Right, of course, because for us the use case is video games, right? We are actually building a hardware video game device that is going to connect to your Web3 wallet. Wi-Fi compatible, and you basically, anything that you can play in terms of a video game on Ordinals is going to be playable on this device, and if you connect your wallet, you can then play to earn and get airdrops onto your wallet. And that's an application where you're really connecting not just like Web 2, but like, you know, physical world, like digital world. So that's one model for us, and with that, we're also developing a lot of like related products, so like merge and other similarities, because at the end of the day, I think video games or gaming in general as an application, it's more about culture and fashion trends than it is about technology and blockchains, right? So if you're interested in building on Bitcoin, I think it's much more important that you understand the culture of Bitcoin and the people behind it and the communities behind it than it is that you understand the technology. I think the technology actually not important at all. I know a lot of artists, for example, they don't understand the technology behind it at all, and they do very successful launches of their artwork on Bitcoin. If they understand the culture, then they understand methods like Versats, for example, right? And I think, so if you combine Bitcoin culture with your ideas, then I think that's going to be a lot more successful if you're launching onto Bitcoin. Yeah.
I think when we talk about user cases, now compared to EVM, what we're going to have on Bitcoin, I don't think will be too different from what we have on the EVM. So we're going to have trading, AMM, we're going to have a lend and borrow, we're going to have a yield farming, we're going to have a launchpad and things like that, right? Now, so I don't think from that perspective there will be anything unique about Bitcoin. Having said that though, what I just mentioned before, how are they different from what we actually do in the real world? We do exactly the same thing. We trade, we exchange, we buy and sell, we lend and borrow, and we do whatever. Yeah. So they are very similar. I think one thing that is important is if that is the case, why on earth are we building on Bitcoin at all, rather than continuing with the EVM? And I think that is the typical sort of conversation we tend to run into. I think there's a few key points, and that relates to the overall market size and also user adoption point as well. I think the most important thing is if you build on Bitcoin, you are the closest to the biggest market cap holders in the world, and that you cannot ignore. If you think about the user experience again, if you think about the difficulties Bitcoin users have to go through just to use wrap Bitcoin and then try to do something on the EVM, it is almost not impossible, but fairly difficult. And I'm being nice here, yeah. And exactly. And I think that sort of naturally reduces your audience. And when you talk about Bitcoin, we're talking about mass adoption. We're talking about really high street, right? So for everyone's use. And when we did our own rebranding or repositioning, and we are heavily, because as a project and the platform, we are heavily focusing on our target audiences and our user growth. And we identified 3 distinct groups, one of which includes what you call Bitcoin holders, which again goes back to the Bitcoin market cap. So what do we mean by that? And unfortunately, they are not degens. They are not Web3 users. They are just moms and pops holding Bitcoin. Moms and pops may be a bit too much of exaggeration, but most people who hold Bitcoins as the value store and also to trade on CeFi, they are Web2 users we are talking about, right? So I think that is very important thing that you think about. So the use case is going to be the same. I think the most important thing is how the same use case will be used to capture your target audience. And I think that is going to be a key question a lot of builders will be asking, and that really drive the opportunities within that. Essentially, I think we're moving probably from the user experience much more of a Web 2, that convenience, one click, will be reintroduced. And the EVM, you're seeing the same thing, for example, social logins and things like that. Yeah. So I think that will be sort of the mainstream, which also means the way we see is the trajectory of the DeFi growth on Bitcoin will be actually quite different from what you see on the EVM. EVM is very degen-centric for a good reason, and it makes totally sense given the infrastructure they built. Just I mentioned, the infrastructure that we think we should build on the Bitcoin will be different because our target users are different. The user cases will be also dictated by that as well.
Yeah, maybe I can expand on this because, I agree with both of them. I think what is really important and why I think ordinals are basically the game changer now, because before we unlock the whales, before we unlock, these people that hold a lot of Bitcoin, these people, if let's say you have 50 Bitcoins, right? You're not going to put it in a DeFi protocol that just launched to make a little bit of money, some small percentage, right? Because on Bitcoin, if we do it the right way, DeFi is not going to be yielding 30%, right? It's going to be much lower. And so you're not going to be the early adopter, but the people that are in ordinals today, they're going to be the early adopters, right? Because they've been playing around, they're the most engaged, they're open-minded, they don't really care. They're not like the maxis that only say, hey, I'm only going to use Lightning Network, I'm only going to do this. like they're much more open-minded. They wanna, kind of mess around with a lot of different stuff that is new. Be it all of these things that we mentioned, be it stacks, be it VPN, be it RGB, be it all of these things. And so if you really follow where the Ordinals crowd is looking at, what they're doing, what they're digiting with, I think, that's where you're gonna see, things actually happen, in the, let's say, short to medium term. Obviously, in the long term, I'm also hoping that we can unlock, the true potential. There's a lot of money in Bitcoin, and if we can unlock it through many of these different use cases, that's gonna be awesome. But again, like realistically speaking, I don't think we're gonna get there very soon. We need much more time, and we need to do much more work, in terms of the education, of those people. And we see with Ordinals, it's very interesting. I don't know. Obviously, we asked like how many people are into Ordinals. I don't know how many people heard about rare sats, right? I don't know if you have researched rare sats, but I just came back from Amsterdam from the Bitcoin conference, and it was really interesting to see that many of those people are like, when you say Ordinals and JPEGs on Bitcoin, they're like, no, I'm not interested in this stuff. But then you go to them again and you say, hey, rare sats, like you already have some Bitcoin, you should just put it in this tool that can scan your address, and maybe you're going to find something that people are willing to pay a lot more money for than just that one sat. And they're like, wow, like this is cool. And then they check the wallet and they're like, oh, maybe I have an extra $50 here, And obviously nobody's going to say no to basically free money. And so, these kinds of things are very interesting, and it's also just like popping up kind of from the Ordinals ecosystem, So like, if you kind of follow where those people are, where they're looking at, what they're using, what they're after, I think you're kind of going to uncover the next big trends.
Can I just, sorry, I know I spoke a lot, but I thought I was a bit too abstract, so maybe I want to just give you maybe 3 examples of same use cases, but slightly different way we develop. Now, the first one is, we talked about it again, is SBTC. Now, if you look at the chart that we had, with diagram that we had before, there are many packed Bitcoin already. So the natural question is, why do we need yet another packed Bitcoin? Now, there's no sort of hiding around it. SBTC is not Bitcoin, right? It is a wrapped Bitcoin. Now, having said that, I think the most important thing, and for the Bitcoin user's perspective, is the fact that it is sufficiently decentralized to bring a lot of value that does not exist on other blockchains. Now, there are many things that, that also affects, for example, OGs holding Bitcoin for a long time, and it affects the security conscious users and so on. So that is the way, because you're building on Bitcoin, what you can do, which is impossible on other chains. And that's what enables Stacks as a Bitcoin layer 2 be able to build. So same use case, but different trajectory. The second one we're talking about is going back to, for example, the Bitcoin users. We're talking about, and what is the most topical one is a Bitcoin spot ETF, for example. Yeah, somewhat unrelated, you may say, but if you think about all the Bitcoin that is sitting on your wallet, for example, on CeFi, what can you do about it? There's very little you can do about it if you just, you take all the efforts to bring over to EVM and you try to land it on the compound and Aave, how much can you get? Like a 0.5%. I mean, come on, you cannot do much about it, right? But once you have the Bitcoin spot ETF, and I don't think many people realize it, that will actually stimulate the demands for Bitcoin borrowing, because market makers and hedge funds will need to trade the short position on the Bitcoin to arbitrage the positions. Now, where will we see the biggest demand for that? It's going to be the Bitcoin holders, because Bitcoin holders, if you build on Bitcoin, you will be able to access their liquidity the easiest. So when we have the Bitcoin spot ETF, when we have a Bitcoin borrow demands grow, then you building on the Bitcoin, having the access to Bitcoin holders with a close proximity is going to be the winner. So that's the next one. The third one is, again, somewhat related, is RWA, for example. So you have a Bitcoin holders, and and it's also related to somewhat emerging market as well, in terms of giving access to people the dollar liquidity and so on, yeah, and the dollar yield. And I think the RWA conversation, in particular stablecoin yield, is very popular. everything that is building on the EVM, again, will have a hard time reaching the, for example, Bitcoin users or CeFi users. But if you build on Bitcoin, by virtue of being close to the same users, and then, for example, issuing in the BRC20 and so on, you can really bring the RWA opportunity closer to the biggest market cap. And if you hold the Bitcoin, you've got to hold some dollar too. Yeah. So I think those, again, the same use cases, but in a different trajectory that Bitcoin builders can enjoy relative to, for example, EVM.
Absolutely. And Chen, you also talked about the Bitcoin ETF. That's probably one of the reasons why Bitcoin price is coming today. And people kind of need to realize that maybe close to 30% of all Bitcoin is kind of lost forever, 20 to 30%. Then close to 40% is dormant, meaning that it was not traded over the last 6 months. Only around 30% of Bitcoin is actually available on exchanges to be traded and so on. So Bitcoin ETF approval with BlackRock, Vanguard, Fidelity, all these big institutions coming on board would actually drive demand in an asset whose supply is highly inelastic. Now let's talk a little bit more about like how can we scale up and bring the mass adoption for these use cases. What are the triggers for mass adoption, and also how can developers that want to participate and help in this mass adoption, how can they bring more users, how can they build applications on the top of Bitcoin and bring more users, and what are the integrations that exist out there for developers to start building? Maybe I'll start with Chen very quick.
Me again?
He said quick though.
I'll be quick. I'll be quick. That's not my strength though. Now, I think again, one thing great about building on the Bitcoin is as an app developer and so on, we're all talking about the security. Building on Bitcoin give you the natural strength around the security and decentralization. And I think that's the reason why you can focus that much more on the user experience as well. And I think again, the mass adoption will be critical with the user experience improvement. And even in the space of DeFi, for example, what you're focusing on is, so Uniswap launched their own wallet, Uniswap wallet, right? Yet they also are plugged into MetaMask and so on as a feature. Yeah. Now, if you think about the difference between the two, MetaMask offering swap functionality is a wallet with some functionalities, trading functionalities. Now, if you think about CeFi, Binance OKX, and so on, what are they? They are a trading app with an account or wallet attached. Yeah. And that's what Uniswap wallet, I don't think they have been successful, so maybe they're ahead of the time. That's what they have. And the reason, this is my personal opinion, I don't know them actually. The reason why they did it was because that way they can provide the kind of Web2 convenience to the users. Rather than users having to log in using the seed phrases in the wallet and then try to find the download it, try to find the swap functionality and so on, this app you can download on the iPhone, have the wallet embedded to you, and you can trade all the trading needs you have in a decentralized way, permissionless and trustless. Yeah? So I think the mass adoption, I think for the Bitcoin is also the same. If you think about the fact that, again, bulk of the Bitcoin holders are CeFi users and people familiar with the Web 2, you have to get closer to them rather than demanding them to come over to your side. That is not going to work. Yeah. Hopefully I was quick here. Which one would you like?
Go ahead if you want.
All right. Being an NFT degen, I'm going to talk about application or like adoption based on of NFTs. And how many of you guys are going to 8Fest in a week? 8Fest holders? Anyone? None of you guys going to 8Fest? You don't have tickets? I can give you tickets to the Sunday events. I've got a bunch of those. But so you know,
Mario
like NFTs from the Ethereum NFT boom 2 years ago kind of drove off this, became like the biggest application that's not finance related since crypto came out, right? As I said, an NFT is about arts and culture, it is about social. If you've ever been to like an NFT event, it's a lot more fun than this, right? Like people are drinking and partying and social, and people are meeting in person individuals that they've met online for a long period of time. And it's not like us, we're like, we talk business online, now we meet in person, we're like, yo, yeah, handshake, right? Whereas for NFT communities, they're like, yo, I finally see you here. I've seen you on Twitter Spaces all the time. I've seen you in group chats. You did this, you said that. There's like friendships have been built previously online in the virtual space, and now they're connecting in real life. And that, I think, it's a lot more of the way that young people like to social, like the ethos of like the Gen Z type, the youngest generations that like to have a hidden identity that's not what their Web2 real life identity is, and social based on that. So I think NFTs will continue to do that on ordinals as well. They've done that in Ethereum, they'll do that also on ordinals. The culture is a little bit different, but you'll learn that once you start trading ordinals and join some of these communities. And I think, and with that related is like apparels. I'm talking like merch. I'm talking like, I'm wearing this like Bored Ape shirt, right? I had this custom made with my ape on the back, and people, Azuki and CloneX, some of the biggest NFT projects on the Ethereum side, a lot of their, even Frank DeGods, a lot of their business models, and Pudgy Penguins as well, are trending towards merchandising and basic consumer goods. And that used to be, like, merch used to be just IRL events to like drive people's eyeballs and like make people wear something take something that with them to like remember who you are. But I think with NFTs, it's gradually becoming a way for these projects to generate long-term revenue, right? And your people, like NFT brands are partnering with traditional brands. This project in Singapore called Imaginary Ones partnered with Hugo Boss, and they built that into a long-term partnership. Not to mention CloneX bought by Nike, and I'm rocking Nike Air Force Ones. I'm waiting on my CloneX Air Force One. They ship to the U.S. I'm getting those DNA Air Force Ones over here, and to where am I going to wear those shoes? Not in my Web2 life. The only place I wear them is to events like this, where I meet people like you guys, right? And it's that is becoming a bigger part of people who trade and are involved with NFTs. And I think that's only going to get more popular because partying is important. Like it's what gets a lot of attention. It's what gets people excited. Like, Jan, you fly around the world every year, going to dozens and dozens of events, right? And these IRL events really drive a lot of energy and attention to people. And once you're in that culture, I think it's going to change fundamentally a lot of consumer behavior. And I think the pie of that is going to get bigger and bigger.
Thanks for that, Seth. So from my perspective, right, when you ask about mass adoption, I kind of don't believe it's coming anytime soon, to be honest, because especially when it comes to Bitcoin, right, we need more use cases, right, because everybody likes different things, right? Some people love NFTs, some people love JPEGs on blockchain, okay, ordinals, that's the thing for them. Some people are waiting for DeFi, some people want to make a little bit of money or some yield on their Bitcoin that is otherwise just sitting there, right? Some people, they probably want to just degen fungible tokens, and stuff like that. Some people need a stable coin built on Bitcoin, right? Because there's a lot of people in the developing world that are kind of like gravitating towards Bitcoin because, let's say, the local currency is not really working, the inflation is too high. But again, still many people don't even want to spend their Bitcoin, right? I was just recently having a hot pot with friends, and they're all Bitcoiners, right? And we finished the hot pot, and we're like, hey, so how do we split the bill? And they're like, hey, just send me Bitcoin. And everybody's like, no, I'm not going to give you my Bitcoin, I'm just going to give you cash, And so even Bitcoiners don't want to use Bitcoin, right? They don't want to spend Bitcoin. And it's because you don't have use cases that are kind of built around that ecosystem, And so until we have those use cases, I don't think we're going to see much larger adoption, right? that's one. I think the comment towards the user experience, to be honest, I think the user experience is actually quite good already. You know, especially when you compare to EVM or whatever. Like when you look at obviously Xverse and some of the other wallets in the space, like it's basically the same experience. Like you go to a marketplace, you go to an app, you log in with your wallet, you can sign transactions with 1 or 2 clicks, and basically works. You know, obviously it's a little bit slower on Bitcoin, layer 1, because you need to wait for that block to confirm. But that experience is like pretty much the same, right? So then again, like some people will be the decentralization maxis that will always want to have their seed phrase and they will want to have full control over their assets. But there are going to be some people that don't want to deal with that because, hey, this is a pain for me. I don't want to lose this stuff because I know I lose my wallet, whatever, all the time anyways, right? And so again, it all comes down to building more use cases, having more people that are maybe kind of focusing on a specific market to build stuff for them, and the market will decide, you know, what's going to be the winning stuff. So yeah, I'm just bullish on builders, to be honest. Like you know, you guys have been in it for a very long time. We have been building Xverse for more than 2 years. Nobody really cared about Bitcoin 2 years ago. You know, nobody really, not so many people like even knew about stacks, you know, all these things. Now you see the hype, like, you know, yeah, you mentioned BitVM. Honestly speaking, I have no idea where it's gonna go, but if you go to their Telegram group, there's 1,000 people interested in like learning more about it, right? And so, again, yes, I do believe it's a little bit overhyped, to be honest, but the fact that now these things are happening and the eyeballs are here for builders on Bitcoin, that makes me extremely bullish.
Can I just add? No, I think I forgot to mention one thing. In the usage, the use case, and the mass adoption, I think one thing that we need to distinguish is when you talk about Bitcoin, we're talking about really 2 things. Bitcoin as the store of value, and Bitcoin as the settlement network or settlement layer, or blockchain, rather, ledger, right? And I think the 2 have a very different mass adoption potential and opportunity because they work differently. And in some way, I think both have a great potential, but perhaps a different the audience as well. So on a personal level, I think the using Bitcoin, and I think Ordinal actually, and all the asset issuance they were talking about on Bitcoin is not really talking about, and I think that's where sort of we as in sort of the ordinal groups and so on, tend to have an issue with the Bitcoin maximalist and people talking about, you know, Bitcoin should stay as the store of value, because we want to use Bitcoin blockchain as our settlement layer and as a data layer, you know. So I think that 2 distinction, I think, is also very important as well.
Yeah, I think you guys absolutely nailed it. So Ian was talking like you're having dinner and no one wants to pay the dinner with Bitcoin, right? Because Bitcoin is seen as a reserve asset. That's the Gresham's law, right? Gresham's law says that if you have 2 different forms of money, you always want to spend first the worst form of money, right? If I have Hong Kong dollars and Bitcoin inside my wallet, I want to first spend my Hong Kong dollars, right? And it goes to what Sean just said. But however, I might not want to spend my Bitcoin, but there is a settlement layer where if I have other assets on Bitcoin, if I have a US dollar stablecoin, for example, I'm willing to use
exactly.
network for that.
Yeah.
So we have here 3 amazing trailblazers, right? I want to start with Jan. How can the builders here in this room start developing on top of Bitcoin layer? You have guys been developing. What's your advice for the builders that we have here in the room?
Yeah, you know, disclaimer, I'm not an engineer, so whatever I say, please like, you know, discount it on that because I don't want to say it's easy or like I don't want to make it sound that it's too easy. Maybe Chen can comment on this a little bit better as a CTO. But from my experience, right, like, you know, building on Bitcoin is actually simpler in a way because of the limitations, right? Especially, again, I'm mostly focusing on ordinals because that's where we have seen the most activity so far. I'm hoping it's going to change, it's going to go elsewhere too. But right now, when you look at all the builders like marketplaces, the DeFi protocols that you can borrow Bitcoin against your ordinal and stuff like that, it's mostly built with PSBTs, partially signed Bitcoin transactions, as well as maybe DLCs and a couple other things. And so if you learn those principles, you are actually going to be able to build a lot of stuff on Bitcoin on the layer 1. Yeah. obviously, if you then go to the layers like stacks and others, obviously, maybe Chen can comment on that, like what do you need, what kind of knowledge, what kind of language, etc. But for Bitcoin, it's actually quite simple, and we see a lot of people kind of like coming back right now because of that fact, and because of the fact that there's not so much built just yet. And so, just kind of getting involved in those communities, and kind of even I would say again, like kind of coming back to ordinals, there's a lot of these communities that their ultimate purpose is to educate people about building on Bitcoin, And so just getting involved, not necessarily like buying all of those ordinals, but like getting into those discords, getting into those telegrams chat, and like sharing with these people, potentially even finding people that want to build something together with you. I think that's the way to go. And even for us as experts, like we're always launching different APIs and different tooling to make it easier again for builders to come on and start building with us for Bitcoin, right? So that's if you want to build whatever, like I'm always here to have like one-on-one conversations and explore how we can support it. So, and over to you, Chen.
So anyone who wants to build on Bitcoins, I think the ordinal was actually a very novel and a very interesting breakthrough that was enabled by Taproot. But when it actually comes to, important thing is we don't need to, and I think I agree with you, we're not saying we need a change to the Bitcoin fundamentally. And I think Bitcoin should stay as it is, and the simpler the better. And I think so builders shouldn't always also feel that there needs to be something that must change at the Bitcoin protocol level for us to blossom, if you like. Now, if you take, for example, fungible token standard and the Rune you mentioned, very interesting thing is so Rune uses op return. So we actually don't need a Taproot.
Yeah. We can go back.
Yeah, we can go back to 2019 and so on. We can have the fungible standard in our own. Why did we not have it? Why do we have it today, not 2 years ago? That's because of just mentality. Unfortunately, that's just the way humans behave. And I think now we have that momentum, people realizing that there is something that we can build. And I think that is the most important thing. And as we build and integrate Bitcoin and the Bitcoin L2 stacks over the last few months, we actually recognize that pain as well as the concern by the builders at all. So the part of our restructuring essentially is to encourage builders to build on Bitcoin and stacks and ALEX. So on our end, we are now working a lot with, for example, the Trust Machine, which is the echo fund of the stacks, as well as the Bitcoin Frontier Fund, and so on. We also launched our own the echo fund, specifically on those projects building on ALEX. So the whole idea is we will help you not only from the seed funding perspective, but also from the technology assistance and the community and the platform. So that all encompassing help is what we want to roll out to our builders, because I think the time is really now. We have a Bitcoin halving coming, we have a Nakamoto release coming up. Again, Nakamoto release for the builder's perspective, DeFi builder's perspective, may be even more important than SBTC, because what you can do with a 5 seconds confirmation is just miles different from 10-15. There are many things you can do with a 10-15 minute confirmation, and we have been running our protocol on that basis for the last 2 years. We tried, for example, lend and borrow. We had to pull back. Why? Because it cannot cope with the liquidation, for example. What you can do with the 5 seconds, that change, commercially speaking, is humongous. So Nakamoto release is coming, SBTC, the first permissionless, decentralized Bitcoin, packed Bitcoin, coming next year. We'll all put them together, again, together with the Bitcoin halving. The time is right for Bitcoin builders to really build and ride this wave. Yeah, so that's what I want to say.
Cool. My recommendation for building Bitcoin, don't build for infrastructure because it's too late. Well, no, not absolutely, with caveats, right? Like, I mean, if you look at these builders here on stage, right? I mean, Xverse has been around for how many years? 4? 2.5, 3 years.
3
ALEX,
years.
2-3 years. We've been building on Ethereum for 2 years before going into ordinals. if you haven't built for any Web3 blockchain before, your first step is just to go into anywhere and just start building, but don't expect instant success, right? You're probably gonna just be a small player. You're gonna just figure it out as you go, and then once you have experience, you can decide if you want to build for whatever you're trying to. You will only achieve success. You will be more likely to achieve success if you're first. So especially at the infrastructure level, because these things happen so quickly and they're so competitive. Infrastructure is where there's a very strong, in Chinese we call it 马太效应, right? So like first will gain like 80% market share, and number two gets like 10% market share. So if you don't win, you only one winner, right? Winner takes all. So you have to be there early, and you have to be really, really fast in terms of adopting and like modifying and going with the market. If you're not first, whatever new thing comes out within that segment, be first in that, right? So it requires so much attention and constantly building and focusing, and just like if you used to be building in Web 2, like lean startup or like lean development isn't even enough for Web 3, because it's like even faster pace. And we joked about 1 month being 1 year, 1 week being 1 month in Web 3. It is that case right now in the ordinal space. So that's my take on infrastructure, because we've tried that for Ethereum and we were really, really painful for us. If you build for a project, if you want to sell NFTs, if you want to sell related NFT related goods, that's very different. In that case, you don't have to be first, but you have to understand the culture. Like you have to come up with a meme, you have to come up with something that's fun and interesting, you have to be catchy. That takes a specific type of personality and experience and background, and you have to be really plugged into the system. If you weren't an NFT trader yourself, you won't understand what these people like. You won't understand, like you have to be that consumer yourself before you even try to sell one of these things to people, right? So that is a different path. So it depends on your techno. If you're techno based, or if you are like a cultural based person, these may be different paths for you.
Amazing. I think we are already overrunning a bit in terms of time. So to close the panel, I'd love to have you sharing with the audience one final thought or observation regarding the future of the Bitcoin ecosystem.
Yeah, real quick. I mean, I'm super excited that the building is finally happening on Bitcoin, and so I kind of want to say like whatever you want to build, like do you, right? Like don't just follow what other people tell you to build, because you need to stick with it for at least a couple of years to get to a certain level, right? Like you're not going to be able to like build something in a matter of months and like have a huge success. Usually doesn't happen, and so pick the stuff that is really, really close to you. And one more thing that I want to say, maybe you're not ready to start something on your own. We're hiring. Always happy to have a conversation. And we're based here. We're based in Hong Kong. We're very bullish on Asia. Asia is the alpha. And so, if you guys want to have a conversation about anything regarding building on Bitcoin, building with Xverse, or just want to have conversation about brainstorm ideas, like I'm always available. So thanks so much.
Actually, I forgot to say, we have an airdrop alert of our t-shirts. Okay? So we have lots of our own t-shirts that I'm wearing now. So please feel free to pick them up on your way out. It's actually very good quality. It's good stuff. So that's the first one. I mentioned about what we are trying to, how we are trying to help builders coming to build on Bitcoin. Now, if you want to find more information, please go to our website, www.alexgo.io. And then if you scroll down, you can see sort of in our GitHub and all the information, as well as the link, blog survey link, that is sort of a decentralized Google survey, if you like. Where you can provide your project information and your ideas, and we can discuss about how we can work together. We're already working with a number of projects building on some of the products that I mentioned, including the RWA and the yield products and so on. And we're incubating a number of them already, and we are really willing to work with other developers. So please do check out our website. Thank you.
By OG. No, I would say the entire ecosystem booming in the Bitcoin. It's like the most game-changing meta that's happening in all of Web3. We come from Ethereum. So many projects in ordinals come from Solana, like Magic Eden, DeGods, and so many. It's just I can't like it feels as if the entire like half the ecosystem dumped the original project and moved over to ordinals. And that's what's so magical about BTC is that it has the power to draw people, developers, builders from multiple other chains, POW chains or smart contract chains to come over and build on this particular network, which is very different if you start a new blockchain and you try to attract other people to build on a new chain, right? And I think that's the sign that this consensus is the strongest amongst the entire Web3 space. So I would say if you are looking into Web3 investing or just hanging out and buying NFTs and chilling, like this is worth the most attention. Like in terms of time allocation, allocate the most amount in this segment more than anything else.
Awesome. Guys, I think this was extremely useful and insightful. Thanks again for organizing and setting up everything. It was really good. And I think it's now time for networking. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Cheers. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks so much. Be careful. Oh, thank you. Thank you for organizing.
Thanks. I keep wanting to call you Alex.
I know, right?